Hello, everybody. I would like to just say it again, welcome to Boost 2020. Thank you all so much for joining us virtually. Taylor Bradshaw, our wonderful MC for the evening, will be joining me as host of our Talkback session. My name is Erin and I'm a co-chair of the DELS. We're also welcoming on our finalists. You can see them popping up now. And just to let you know a few more details about tonight. First of all, if your video is a little choppy and you want to watch again or just watch it all for whatever reason, we're going to be sending out the link of the video tonight around 8 o'clock, as well as in that email will be the link to the voting, which we've also put in the chat on the right-hand side. And we're going to move into our question and answer style webinar now. And so if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and we'll turn you on in the Zoom so that you can ask your question live, or you can type it into the chat. Either one works. So I think, do you want to get started, Taylor?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I have one more thing to add. If you have it for like a specific organization, make sure to put in who the question is for.
Yes. That's a call. All right, well, let's first start by welcoming our finalists. Hi, everyone. Well, we have a question for Sunny with Dynamex from Carly. Carly's question is, what is your experience with and plan for effective community engagement to assure environmental justice concerns are met and that the tool is used effectively?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question, Carly. So what we've seen in some of the communities that we're in, climate action is so complicated that oftentimes cities don't have the time, effort, or budget to go above and beyond to reach out the most at-risk members of the community. With our tool, what we were able to do, we were able to bump that up in the priority list by having that be a starting place. So on day one, cities are able to see at-risk communities, be it economically, right? So they do it by household income, in terms of ethnic or racial background or age groups or any kind of, sort of cluster of at-risk community members, to make sure that the climate actions are nuanced for those groups. And then there's added support and capacity available so that they're not left out of this entire conversation. So that's actually one of the reasons why we took the approach that we did with Dynamex.
Great, thank you. Next, we have a question from Mycocycle. Who are your customers and how does the company bring in income?
Great question. Our customers are the waste management, so the material recycling facilities, the construction and demolition haulers. So transfer stations that segment the materials prior to ever being landfilled, they're accustomed to doing that, as well as manufacturers who have an industrial waste stream. So there's materials that don't maybe meet their sellable standards, and so they pay to manufacture it and then they have to pay to landfill it. And so we could mobilize on site for them and they could treat their waste, and municipalities, because we don't have more landfill space, we have less. So this would be one way to collapse that. And we make money through licensing and then per ton treatment costs. So we're equivalent to the national average of per ton treatment right now for waste. And that's a pretty exciting thing for us to understand and realize. And so we would make it that way in hardware and some setup fees, but it's pretty simple. We follow the same type of model that the waste management process does.
Very cool.
That's pretty neat. And so it all happens right on site then?
Yeah, the goal would be for all the materials to be treated on site and even the soils. So ideally what we're doing is harnessing the power of nature. So what's happening out in our forests with mushrooms decomposing trees, we're housing that in a controlled environment. So it could happen anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, 365 without interruption. And so that would be the ideal situation. And to collapse something that might take 400 years in landfill, which is what happens now, to 4 weeks, but also create a reusable byproduct.
So we have a couple of questions coming in. So for Let's see. Alonda, someone wanted to know the name of the book that you mentioned reading for your book club, and they wanted to know a little bit more what the book is about.
Yeah, definitely amazing. It's a really good book. So As Long as the Grass Grows, and it's by Dina Gilio Whitaker, and it's talking about justice as Standing Rock, and the meaning of the land. That land is not separate from people. It is one together, and how to go about protecting the land for the next generation. And what does that really look like? What does that mean? What is that activism behind it? So it's a really good book. If you guys want to go on our website and check it out, we have the cover and just kind of like a little brief summary of what the book is about.
Great.
We have a question for the Zumwalt farmers. How have your neighbors reacted to what you're doing on your farm, and has it changed their practices?
Yeah, so we're early in conversations with our neighboring farmers, but they're all really excited about the work that they're doing, that we're doing. They're very receptive to the new ideas that we have, as well as old practices that we want to bring back to this land. I think a lot of farmers in the region realize that the practices that are happening right now are not sustainable from a soil health perspective. That said, they're very focused on what is feasible from a financial perspective. And so we've been really lucky to have their input to figure out what practices we should be testing out, what they may be willing to adopt. And so we've had really great dialogue so far, and they are looking to continue to see what our research brings and how that may be able to translate to their practices.
All right. Another question for Dynamex. How many communities have you currently launched Dynamex in?
Yeah, great question. So we have 3 cities, 2 in the Midwest, 1 in the Carolinas, and we're actively closing up conversations with 3 more cities in the Mid-Atlantic in the Maryland region. We've also done universities. So we have university campuses that are tracking their campus-wide climate action plan, and we have 2 of those.
Great, thank you. Let's see, we have another question for Chicago environmental entrepreneurs, educators. Can you recap your primary means of engaging Chicago educators and sharing resources?
Yes, we have a pretty active social media site, but besides that, we've done a number of workshops this summer, and they've been actually open to anybody. We had a number of people that we thought were just in the Chicagoland area that signed up for our Breaking Down Racism and Environmental workshop, and apparently people heard it from Georgia that attended, New York that attended. We're not really sure how they got the link, but we were happy that they came on. So it was actually nice to see that variety and that the message is spreading. But our biggest word of mouth, and it is also our social media site that's getting it out, and our contacts, our networks.
Cool. You should throw in the chat, like maybe a link to your Instagram or whatever platforms that y'all are.
You are definitely right.
A follow-up for you, someone else asked what success looks like for y'all.
Teachers should not have to pay for resources. They shouldn't have to pay for professional development opportunities. They should be compensated for the work. This is extra work outside of the classroom time. And that looks like low-income neighborhoods are also on the same level, scientific resource wise, as higher income neighborhoods. That's what success looks like for us. We do understand that it's not something that can be done by itself alone, that creates an overhaul, but it's a start.
Thank you.
We have a question for Zumwalt Acres. How do you recruit and find the new generation of farmers and interns that will be living and working on the farm? Are there certain universities or programs that you coordinate with, and what does the application process look like?
Yeah, we're partnering with a number of universities that the current apprentices are affiliated with, including Yale University, University of California, Santa Cruz, Middlebury College, Washington University in St. Louis, Northwestern, so sort of all across the country, as well as targeting specifically in the Illinois, Chicago, Midwest community regions. So we're connecting by social media. We have sent out an interest form and received 40 interested applicants so far. We now sent out an official application and are beginning to receive applications, which will be due at the end of November so that we can notify the next cohort and start working with them over the winter, and they will be arriving in March. So that's how the application process works. It's both a combination of word of mouth as well as communicating through our affiliated universities.
We have one for Mycocycle too. What materials can be or not composted? What's the right word here?
Treated.
Treated besides asphalt. Like what is included in that, and are there any exceptions?
We're really focused on the oil and petrochemical containing products because the fungi know how to eat those materials in nature. They're the only known remediators of a compound known as PAH, which happens through partial firing of materials. So like Zumwalt, they're making biochar, but if they don't fire biochar at the right temperature, it actually can create PAH. So there's a balance to be had. But so we look at materials that are in the construction and building industry, but we can also break down wood products, rubbers, things that contain plasticizers, so phthalates and heavy metals, so persistent organic pollutants. So, I mean, we've gone from kind of a narrow focus because of my background to a more expansive perspective, like treating petroleum contaminated soils or metal contaminated soils. And we're just kind of following the need of our clients right now. So, but we believe that the mushrooms can really kind of cure a lot of these evils. And if we just harness the power of them, we can apply them to really disrupt this waste management process that we've known for centuries.
I have a question for Zumwalt Acres folks. How encouraged are you that other farmers in the Midwest will go to go through the major changeover of becoming agriculturally regenerative?
We definitely recognize that it's going to be a slow process and require a series of steps in the transition. And that's sort of why we're doing what we're doing, because we are working on land that's currently conventionally farmed in corn and soy, what acres and acres and acres are farmed in Illinois. And we're working with our family members. One of my cousins manages most of the surrounding land and has been doing corn and soy for years and years now. So people like that are really crucial in understanding what the feasibility is in terms of other farmers doing the same thing. And that's another reason why throughout the process, we're making sure that our bookkeeping is in check, that the financial feasibility is reasonable without like outside grant funding and everything, that we can be self-sustaining in the long term. So that's to say it's going to be a slow transition. It's going to take time before there's a major turnover in the Corn Belt of the US, but we are really optimistic that there are changes. We're already starting to see receptivity to a lot of the ideas that we're introducing. So we're excited about where that can go.
Does the Midwest weather have a challenging impact on the work of regenerative farming, or is it actually good maybe to have big swings in temperature?
Yeah, it works for us. I mean, the climate is something that we know is part of agriculture wherever you are. The winter is obviously a slower month. We have a break in when apprentices are here, when it's really cold in the winter and there's less farming to do, but during that time is a great time to be doing more of the farm planning work, the organizational work, community outreach, and making biochar with the waste products is something that can happen year round. So the growing seasons work with us. Yeah.
I have a question for Sunny at Dynamhex here. For the 3 cities that you've worked with, have they used their data to make specific changes towards climate resiliency or sustainability? Or
Yeah, absolutely. So our first city, we were part of their mayor-approved city resolution. So they've used our data to commit to Paris targets in the next 48 months. So they're reducing almost 24,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions within the city boundaries. And so that's a policy that they were able to set citywide as a result of the data. They've also contracted for rooftop solar for City Hall. Once we were able to show them, here's the impact of what solar would do for the city than buying power from a majority fossil fuel based source. So we're only getting started, and those are just a few things that have already happened in the short amount of time they've used our data.
Have there been any other entrepreneurs in the carbon offset space that have used Dynamex to make an impact or like grow their own business?
Yeah, so we've actually, we're now doing integration with an offset program, so people could look up their home, look at the amount of emissions, and then offset it so be carbon neutral, like in the matter of clicks. But we've also helped solution providers to access who they need to target and collaboratively sell the solution by saying, hey, this is how it impacts your energy costs, but also this is how it impacts your carbon footprint. So we've facilitated a bunch of those discussions, and that's actually the future that we're really excited about, being able to solve climate change a lot quicker than you can do today.
Awesome, thank you.
I see a couple of questions in here about volunteering. So let's see, where did it go? Zumwalt Acres, there was 2 questions. One was about like where you recruit volunteers or interns from, and then the follow-up, are there going to be any like in post-COVID times when folks can be near each other, are there going to be opportunities for volunteering in the future for people who might be interested, who might be in this chat?
Yeah, so like Gabi was saying, we've been recruiting largely through all of our various networks. Social media has been a really powerful tool for that. And through our various institutions, but also we have gotten a lot of interest beyond our institutions, which is really exciting. And in terms of having people come post-COVID, that is a really exciting possibility for us. We really hope that we can host educational events year-round where folks can come and learn about regenerative agriculture, and where we're really hoping that we can especially engage with the local community, especially local public high schools and middle schools, elementary schools, where those students can come and learn about what we're doing here and see how that may be the same or different from what they've grown up with. And also along with that, local Future Farmers of America chapters, which we've already begun having dialogues with, which is super exciting. But like I said, also opportunities for folks from Chicago, from the city, from all over to come and see what we're doing.
What about with the Chicago environmental educators? Is there opportunity to volunteer with you all?
Yeah, so we actually promote our work all the time on our social media page, and we invite people to come out and say, hey, like, see, he's going to be at this spot on this day at this time. If you're available, please come through and join us. But we also have a little members portion on our website, and you can join for free. It's not anything you got to do. It's just saying, hey, I want to be a member. And we're going to, starting next year, actually send out updates, monthly updates about this is what we have going on for volunteering, so you can plan ahead of time. And this is also what you see our partners, local organizations that are doing, just in case. These are people that we communicate with, have also done work with, just in case you're interested in joining them on some of their projects as well.
Great. I just want to put a reminder in there. If y'all put your questions in the Q&A, that would be helpful, just to keep it all in one place. Let's see. Our next question is for Chicagoland environmental educators. What is your future goal for helping educators, and how have other educators reacted to your programming?
It's actually been super positive. The whole goal was to break down those barriers for scientific resources. So a lot of times when we've had people join our workshop, they are different grade levels coming from different parts within the city and the surrounding suburbs. And then we make sure we have that breakaway time in those sessions for them to actually communicate with each other on how they're doing something in their classroom or how their district is doing something. So that time to talk that teachers don't usually have, even within their own school. So that's been super important for us to make sure that we have that time aside. But it's been open to anybody that wants to partner up with us or join on a workshop, or even just check into our community pop-ins that we have once a month, and just say, hey, my name is so-and-so, I'm here doing this, and just what is everybody else doing?
I have a question for everybody, but we could start maybe with Mycocycle. How would the boost funding be used to expand your mission? And I know some of you said it in your videos, but just to reiterate how it would help you.
It would help us get out of our beachhead strategy. So, you know, what we started with as an entrepreneur isn't always what you finish with. And there are more philanthropic missions out there, like helping to clean up Chicago communities. And as we look at kind of the heat sinking map with all of the red areas of greater Chicagoland, that's not only where industrialization was, but it's also where a lot of waste transfer stations are. You have increased air quality issues, water issues, and climate justice issues, climate health issues with vulnerable populations. So the funding would allow us to kind of expand our mission to go into these communities and help lend some education around regenerative soils and around community engagement and advocacy. And we would partner with organizations that are already operating in those spaces because they know the communities best and they know the community issues best. And, you know, we were really taken back by some of these communities that are, you know, you've got parks where kids are playing and they're contaminated with heavy toxins, with heavy metals that were left behind. And, you know, families never knew that, right? They've grown up there generationally forever. And we've got to start addressing that. While we're growing our process, we need to also address the community need, and they would allow us to do that.
Okay, so it would allow you to expand to projects that don't necessarily have funding quite yet for such a...
You don't have a shareholder hawking on you, or you don't have somebody who's saying, oh, well, this isn't part of your growth strategy or your traction or your PO metrics. You know, when you go through this entire process, and I think Sunny was shaking his head as kind of a foundational entrepreneurial startup for the purposes of commercializing and growing an application, it's very singularly focused on being driven to revenues. And while that is very important to do and to generate new economic opportunities, particularly in the green economy, that doesn't mean that we're doing the best by the communities as we're growing. We're kind of leaving them behind. And so this would allow me to have a dual traction to say, okay, we're going after funding in this manner, but we're also going to be focused on these communities that are around us and try to serve them better and not kind of answer to the master all the time and say that this is of equal importance to us.
Okay, who would like to go next to elaborate on what you might have already said or explain further how boost funding could help your group?
I mean, I can go unless someone else wants to go. So, you know, our main goal is to, you know, empower people ultimately. Like, I mean, think about, there's 66 people that's participating, a few of us. The amount of time it would take for all of us to understand what our footprint is today, the building that we're in right now, right? It's going to take us a long time to come at that value and a longer time to figure out what we should be all doing about it. So our main strategy and our main goal with the company, but also with Boost's involvement, is to give this assessment, give this like insight to a community. So it could be a university for its university campus, it could be a zip code, it could be a small city. It's as much as it helps us internally to like develop new products and scale, we rather give the insights that is available today to a community. So they're not waiting around to track impact. Trackable impact is there, ready for action. So I think that's something that we're very passionate about, and that's a model that we're really excited about going forward, is one way for everyone to see the problem so that we can act. And that's what the Boost funding would do for us.
All right, anyone else want to answer this one?
Yeah, I'll go ahead for CE. Boost funding for us it's really simple. Teachers need scientific and environmental resources. One of the things that we've put aside in our budgeting is to buy some of those resources, so like air monitoring kits. We actually just bought a GoPro to do water activities. That was one of our latest workshops that we had with the Shed Aquarium. We have money put aside to buy water testing kits as well. And that's not for us to keep, but that's for us to hand out to the teachers and to the community. So it's for us, it's really just that simple to have resources that we can give out to the community and to the teachers that absolutely need these scientific resources in their classroom. And then with COVID being involved too, that's also another barrier, and to find different ways and methods of making sure that those resources are actually getting into the homes of the students that they're teaching. So that's what we're working with currently with the teachers that we have on board. We've been very blessed to have a really nice following with Chicago public school teachers, as well as some of the teachers in the surrounding suburbs. And it's been beneficial so far.
Awesome. Zumwalt, your last one.
Yeah, so we believe it's really critical to ensure diversity and equity in our apprentices. And in order to do so, we need to be able to provide stipends so that it's not a financial barrier in order to participate in this learning opportunity for a season, a summer, or longer, especially because so many similar learning opportunities are unpaid and therefore inaccessible. And we really need apprentices in order to carry on this vision. They are the ones that are planting our chestnut and hazelnut trees in the spring, cultivating our perennial nursery, making biochar, growing veggies. Otherwise, we would not be able to carry out what we're doing here.
Yeah, truly apprentices power our operation. Young people must be leading the way in establishing a way of farming that we all believe in and want to cultivate for years to come. Rural communities are increasingly deserted, but we believe they must be at the forefront of fighting climate change, especially here in Illinois. We are so fortunate to have some of the most fertile soil in the world, and we know it can and must be utilized to fight climate change by planting trees and storing carbon in the soil.
You mentioned biochar, and one of our questions was if you could elaborate on your use of biochar.
Absolutely. Yeah, so biochar is a really simple technology. It's something that has been used for hundreds and thousands of years, actually. And it's really just a way of burning organic material, such as dead trees, corn husks, nutshells, any sort of organic waste material in a controlled way. And it creates something that looks like charcoal that you might have seen around before. But the difference is that it's burned in a controlled way that's super high in carbon, so that carbon is stored in a stable form for hundreds and thousands of years. So rather than letting those dead trees or whatever it is decay in a matter of years and thereby emitting all of the carbon that's stored in it as CO2 emissions into the atmosphere, it's actually stored for hundreds of thousands of years and can be applied to soil. And it's a really great soil amendment. It increases soil fertility, increases water holding capacity. It can be used to replace other soil amendments that are actually harmful for the environment. And so we're doing it in a really affordable, relatively small scale, low technology kiln. We make about 200 liters in a couple of hours right now, and it can happen at many different scales depending on the kiln size.
Can I just say, somebody who's never farmed in my life, it sounds like magic.
I had no idea what this was until I heard about y'all.
So, very cool.
There was a question that I really like, and Erin, you can push back if you don't want me to ask this, but it's to all the participants. It's what's one question you wish you were asked more often about your project or your organization? I just really liked that question. So whoever wants to jump in first, feel free. I know it's kind of a weird one, but
I want to piggyback off of what Joanne said, you know, with investors and shareholders, just markets in general and how entrepreneurs are perceived by everybody, like pop culture or just in general. I wish more people asked questions of like, so what? Like, what's the impact? Like, why am I hearing what you have to say? Which they do a lot when you're talking financials, but in environmental entrepreneurship or social entrepreneurship broadly, we don't get asked, you know, so what by the broader business community, and so we don't have the opportunity to, like, you know, tell them our case, like, hey, this is why entrepreneurship could be used for something other than financial metrics. So I wish more people would ask us and others, you know, the so what about our solutions.
Sunny, I agree. 3 billion square yards of landfill space a year is filled up, and it emits 30 times the methane gases that CO2 does. That's our so what. We should be caring about that. You know, we're not getting more space, we're getting less. And the space that we're taking up is being polluted by toxins into the air and water. It's just that simple. When people ask, well, you know, why did you start doing this? It's because I knew that I worked for a company that was part of that issue, right? And we didn't have the solution. And I knew our industry, though, in full disclosure, was trying to figure this out, but that wasn't their primary focus. That's not what somebody was getting paid to do. So I appreciate that and this opportunity to kind of talk about the social and environmental impact of this. And plus, for me, I appreciate the opportunity to kind of interface with the other entrepreneurs here, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration. I can see lending, you know, materials to Chicago environmental educators. I could see collaboration with the Webbles. You know, I mean, I see so much potential here, and so pulling something like this together, that's another question. Like, who else could help you expand your reach on this and scale it faster? And something like this does that.
For CE, the big thing that we have, the question is why are underrepresentation in our neighborhoods, low income neighborhoods, so vastly underfunded? That is something when it comes to how resources are distributed that we wished people would ask more. That's a broader question. It's a lot behind that question, but I think it's something that's very important for us to look at. It's constantly being said that we all start from the same level, which we don't. Some people start up here, some people are down here. We don't start from the same level. And a big reason for that is the education that we receive at an early age. Early education is extremely important to childhood development, and those resources that the teachers should have at their disposal should be a resource for not just the children and their parents, but for the community as a whole. But when those resources are not in that community that way, it definitely hurts long-term and generational. So one of the questions that we really wish that we were asked more is, why are some of these communities more underfunded when it comes to the resources that they should naturally have access to?
right. That's a very good
Zumwalt
point.
Acres. Oh, yeah,
That's
thank you.
something I think about a lot.
So I think one question that I wish we would get asked is what was our original inspiration and why did we choose to take a break from college and come here and do this? And I think a huge part of our inspiration is just that the realization of this farming vision would be a 40-year vision in the making. Like our father grew up on this farm. We are the 6th generation farming this land. And as he grew up, he really saw the transformation of agriculture going to conventional farming and just completely destroying the land and the native species that were around. And I think that always hearing all these stories growing up, hearing about how the land was deteriorated and hearing about his vision that he wanted to achieve as an adult farmer, but was not able to achieve, like, I think really just inspired us. And we felt like now was the time. Now with climate change and with COVID, it just felt like the time was right. And it was time for us to come back to the farm and to make this 40-year vision a reality.
No time like the present to start something. So before we go to our next question, I do want to tell everyone, first of all, thank you for staying on with us for so long. This has been a really great discussion so far. We're going to keep it going for about 5 more minutes, so ending at 7:20, if that works for everybody. But we still have some more questions for you. All right. Do you have one picked out, Taylor?
There's a couple in here. I don't know if we want to do a big old group question like we've been doing or target individuals. Any preference?
Nope.
Okay, but let's just do one to everyone again. So Liz asked, what was the #1 lesson learned, or what is your advice or lesson learned to entrepreneurs looking to get into the environmental space? So either advice or a lesson you have.
Well, I'll go. I often joke that it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. It is certainly at the midpoint of my career, but it's certainly the most rewarding. And so, I mean, one of the lessons learned is to have the passion, but also to be able to communicate the vision with some metrics around it. And so that's what I would say. I mean, I think this group here is pretty well adapted to that. They're able to gain funding, and that's part of the process. But if you're going to grow, I mean, I've been in business for 30 years, but this is my first startup, so it's a whole new learning. It really is trying to nail down how to concisely talk about your vision and make it wholly applicable to the audience you're talking to. So you have to kind of morph a bit and be nimble.
I think I can go. So yeah, just for entrepreneurship, one thing on day one you need to understand, you need to know, like, what are deal breakers. Like, you can always scale and make money. Like, there's problems out there that could be profitably solved, and then there are pressing problems out there that may not be readily apparent but are worth solving. So if you're passionate about solving the ones that are worth solving that no one is because there's no money to be made, know that on day one, because there will be opportunities for you to not cut corners, but like take bigger deals because it's profitable. But so it works, you have to like balance the financial metric with the social metric. And it gets pretty tough. I mean, entrepreneurship, like I said in my earlier example, it's very slated towards the quicker you make money, the more successful you are. But there categorically a lot of entrepreneurs at the end of their life really wish that they did something early on that created social value. So this is a great place or a great time to start social ventures, but remember your deal breakers.
Good advice for life generally too.
I think advice that I would give is just that the network of people willing to support you and help you and teach you is so much more expansive than you think it is. I think that as we've delved deeper and deeper into this experience, we have really learned that. We've just gotten so much support from researchers and local farmers and teachers and friends and people who just happen to know more about agroforestry than we do. Like, we've met so many incredible people, and they've all helped us in such incredible and meaningful ways. And so I think that definitely is my advice, is just spread your reach, because it will really come back to you. And then that'll just help you continue it on and help other entrepreneurs.
Yolanda, if you want to answer this question, you can, but I have another question for you if you'd rather skip this one.
Whichever question you'd like to pose at me is fine.
All right. Well, Tim Sykota asks, what sets your program apart from the other science-based education programs in Chicago, for example, the Chicago River Schools Network?
That is a really great question. I was actually in the process of writing back to him with that one. So yeah, thank you for asking that one. That's a really good question. They have a really strong network. There is no denying that. And we have looked to partner with them. I think one of the things that set us apart is definitely that community aspect. We aren't just saying this has to be within the school system itself. CEE is definitely a realization that school doesn't just happen in the school, but it also happens in the community, which I think a lot of us know. But sometimes when you're doing this work, it's a very hard concept to grasp. And so working with other local partners that also have that connection to not just what's happening in the schools with the teachers, but have that connection to what's happening in the home in their communities, and understanding that culture that's being processed in those communities, or whatever type of culture it may be, is the difference between CEE. We're looking to not just be in the school and say that this is for the teachers and this is for the classroom, but we're looking to also be in the community and be in the home. Thank you for that question.
I thought it was an important one to ask. All right. Well, that concludes our session, right, Taylor?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think there were some last questions in there, but if you want to copy and paste them if they're directly to you and reach out, feel free. But yeah, we answered the majority of questions, I think, or y'all did.
So thank you to our finalists. You all did such amazing jobs and are so inspiring. And thank you to everybody for joining us for Boost and asking such great questions. It was hard to keep up with them all.
Yep. But definitely do not forget to vote. I know if you're like me, you'll probably wait till the very last second, because I'm very indecisive and I'm going to have a hard time voting here. But don't forget to do that if you were a part of the event tonight.
By Sunday at midnight.
Yes.
So every day, Sundays when voting closes. I will paste the link one more time in the chat. Oh, somebody else already did it for me.
And I think it was in the email.
Yeah, it'll go out.
Well. So it's in a couple of places.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Appreciate it.